All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Johan Matthews, member of the learning team here at the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast, and I want to welcome you all to this mini course, Co-op Curious 2026. It's good that you're all here. It means you're all part of an emerging class of people, of human beings who are yearning for connection and believe in a new way of doing business. So we hope that you get some value out of this course. It's a three-part course, and we will be with you, on your journeys as you try to design, manage, and govern your own co-op. So today's session will be recorded. So if you may have to miss one, we'll get the recording to you. Folks can still register for the other two sessions as well. If you don't want to be on camera, feel free to come off camera. Most of the session will be presentations and exchanges. So it's okay if you don't want your likeness to be shared. All right. So today's course and the entire course is brought to you by the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast. We're a 50-year-old CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, a nonprofit working for economic, social, and racial justice. We're known for co-op-friendly financing, typically loans, and we also provide co-op business coaching through our learning team, which I'm a member of, and we serve as an investment opportunity for socially conscious enterprise. So I'm joined in the call today by a few of my colleagues on the learning team. We got Carolyn. What up, Carolyn? We got Maggie holding it down. And there's also our co-op coach, Carla, who I'm not sure if she's here yet. So there's a few of us. And as co-op coaches, we've served hundreds of co-ops and co-op curious entrepreneurs over the past 5 years or so. And no matter your stage of growth, we can support you, help you identify your goals, clarify next steps, and so on. So if you'd like to get in touch with us in order to be supported, feel free to go to our website, coopfund.coop/coaching, and you can schedule a session. So as I said before, we're doing a three-part mini course. Today is session one. We'll be discussing designing your co-op. We'll have two more sessions on managing a co-op and governing a co-op, going through specific tools and having, different speakers for each one. But throughout the entire process, we'll have office hours to support you. If you'd like to dive deeper into the content, that'll be Wednesdays, 12 to 1. You'll see it pop up on your calendar. Hopefully after this, we'll add everyone to a calendar invite and you can just join. It'll be Google Meet. You just click the link, hop in, and you can have some time to just dive deeper into the content, maybe share what you're working on, hear from other people, and have a sense of community as you work on your goals. You can also take the next step to book a coaching session with us, as was mentioned on our website, or using this link, and you can be connected with our co-op coach for no cost business coaching for emerging and established cooperatives. And if you ever want to be connected to service providers or peers, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to support you in connecting to the movement. So it's a bit about the course overview. The session overview, we've already done a bit of the course overview. Today we'll be covering what is a co-op. So a bit of an overview as what do we mean when we say co-op or cooperative enterprise, and what are some tools that can help you design your co-op? What are some frameworks? So that's what we're going to be covering today. Is there any questions or anything else someone might be looking for? I think I would welcome you all. I know folks will be dropping in as we go to introduce yourselves in the chat, your name, where you're coming from, if you have a co-op, any links, feel free to do so as we go through. And if there are no questions, I'm going to get started. So what is a co-op? I'm actually going to invite you to share as well. I like to invite folks to share how would they define what a co-op is to a pretty smart 13-year-old, pretty smart seventh grader, eighth grader. What's the simplest way you can define this idea, right? If you don't know, that's fine. But how would you describe what a co-op is to a relatively smart seventh or eighth grader? Feel free to drop it in the chat. Give you guys a minute. What is a co-op? How would you define it?
I'd say it's a group of people who come together to accomplish some mission or goal, and in that goal or mission, they share in the outcomes or the upside in it.
Absolutely. Group of people with a goal, sharing the upsides. Thanks, Keel. Good to see you. Anyone else? Pick one more, then move on. How would you define what a co-op is to a seventh grader?
I guess, hi, I'm Katiana. I guess for me, if I was to explain it to a seventh grader, I would say that it's a group of people that I guess share ownership and resources, um, and I guess profits from some type of shared project or company.
Got it. Hey, Katiana. Nice to meet you. I like that. Ownership, resources, profit, sharing those things. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I welcome you all to still drop your ideas in the chat, but I'm gonna get in there. I think, oh, Sarah. Is it Sarah? Okay.
It's Kara.
Kara. Thought so. That was a trick just to get you to come off mute. I'm just kidding. Work-owned businesses, sharing resources, building community. Excellent. Welcome, Kara. And welcome everyone else as well. I think for me, though, I try to keep it real simple with the kiddos, a member-owned business, right? I think of it as a member-owned business, and it is democratically operated by those members. Typically, that means one member, one vote, but it could mean other things, right? How do we share decision making? And it's operated for member benefit, right? So the people who use it, who benefit from it, are the owners, right? It kind of collapses that separation that we typically see with businesses in our community, where one group of people own it, one group of people are consumers, and they're pretty separated. And that separation allows for all types of decision making that's not very empathetic or compassionate. So member-owned business, that's how I like to do, and then unfold it from there. And those members could be individuals living in a community that need housing, right? It's too expensive. I can't afford to buy a house here anymore. But maybe together we can create a co-op, a business that owns a housing complex or a piece of land or a house, one house with several rooms, and all of us as members access housing from it, right? We purchase housing from a company that we all own together, right? It's a way to combat displacement, right? Maybe we don't like the food around here, right? And, 10 of us, 15, 20 of us decide we're going to find a local farmer and buy a cow together. Maybe after years of doing so, we decide, 1,000 of us now, we're going to open a grocery store, a community-owned grocery store, and we're buying from a business we own. We're the members, and we're purchasing the food we like, food that's culturally relevant. It wasn't available before, but we made it happen. Maybe you're the someone in a community who is trying to start a business or trying to buy a car and you don't have access to credit. You go to banks, they say no. Maybe a group of you create a susu, right, where you're lending money to each other on a rotating basis. Or maybe you're as complex as a credit union, right? Credit unions are cooperatives, right? Member-owned businesses that provide credits to that member base, right? Or maybe you're a worker, right? A young designer, realize you're not being paid well enough and you know how to run the ship. So you and your gals, you guys come together and you decide to create a worker-owned business, right? A worker cooperative. Or maybe you've been um, facing insecurity in the workplace, right? You don't have predictable shifts, you don't have hours that are reliable, you don't make enough money. And you and a group of others, maybe your landscapers, decide we can come together and create our own landscaping company and have predictable, stable, secure employment for ourselves, right? So another version of worker-owned co-op. Maybe you're a bunch of kids and you're going to school and you're sick of the system. So you rise up and you're a kid's a kid owned and operated school. It's kidding. It's usually childcare where parents are working together to provide that service to themselves, or maybe they come together and purchase the resources, whether it's a childcare professional building and all those things, or maybe you're a group of farmers who individually can't access a tractor, very expensive piece of equipment, but it will save you so much money if you can do it together and knock it out in a day. So there's lots of different types of co-ops, right? Lots of different ones. And, you know, just to sum it up again, right? We've got worker co-ops owned and controlled by the workers or employees, right? They've got democratic decision making, profits are shared among the workers. We've got consumer co-ops owned by the customers, the people who consume the services, right? And the surplus is returned to those members. Producer co-ops, maybe you're owned by individual producers, it might be farmers, it could be artists and other types of businesses, and they collectively process their goods, right? We buy some type of processor. We all grow grapes. Now we can process the grapes, make juice, right? Saves us money. We market together, right? We're selling together. Maybe we're a purchasing co-op, right? Maybe you're individual businesses and we can't individually afford a bookkeeper. So we purchase those services together, whether it's software or professional or some other tool, right? Or maybe we're even a shared services co-op, right? We're a group of consultants and we share marketing, back-end services, administrative functions, and it reduces our costs, makes us more profitable. So whether you're an individual, an entity, an individual actor in a business, you can create a co-op. And there are levels to co-ops where these different models are interacting with each other. For example, a worker and a consumer co-op as a part of one large grocery store, right? We've got folks who work in the store who are member owners, and we have folks who buy the food in the store who are member owners. So a multi-stakeholder co-ops. So there's all types of different co-op models, right? And co-ops are also a part of a larger movement of democratic organizations, right? We see co-ops in the middle here, and in between more democratic institutions that may not have ownership, like a nonprofit, right? Some nonprofits, especially grassroots nonprofit, can operate as worker-directed nonprofit because there's a working board of people or member-directed nonprofits, and they have democracy, right? They vote on decisions and things like that. If you're a mature nonprofit, you may become less democratic, but you're over there, right? You've got the social capital, right? And then we've got the typical for-profit businesses where it's a typical investor owner or an owner operator, or maybe on the democratic level, it's an ESOP, right? A business with an employee stock ownership plan. That means the employees have a stake in the business, and it's more like a retirement plan, but there's ownership, right? It's not very democratic, right? They may not vote on a lot of things. It may still be based on shares, but you have ownership. And so co-op sits in between these two worlds, right? Democratic organizations and owned organizations, right? Because now we have a democratic ownership structure in a worker co-op, a housing co-op, or consumer co-op. That's in the middle of that spectrum, right? You have that democracy, you have that ownership, and the co-op houses all of those things in one. So it's a pretty interesting model that subverts the traditional constructs of ownership, where it's limited to a few, or of democracy, where we don't have ownership, but we do have some type of decision making. So co-ops are great for that. That's what I like about co-ops. So key concepts in co-ops. First is membership, right? Being a member means you're part of a whole. So some key principles that have been cultivated by the International Cooperative Alliance, but there are other principles. Some key principles include, number one, voluntary and open membership, right? This is important in a context where we've seen discrimination. So in the ICA principles, there's 7 of them. The first one is that we're open to all without gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. That's really important if you're in a society where, again, there's been exclusion and discrimination. We want to be welcoming. But what if you're one of those groups who experience those things? Now you may have a different need, right? If you're part of the Black community or other communities that have faced economic exclusion, maybe it's not so important that you institutionalize being open to all. I'm sure you will be. We're very inclusive people. But maybe solidarity is more important, right? Such as in the Kwanzaa principles in Luzu Saba. Number one is umoja. That means unity, right? Recognizing that there should be unity in the community, in the race, in the family, and so on. So solidarity might be more important to you, right? You can choose your principles, but these are tried and true, pretty important principles for all of us. Second one, democratic member control, right? Members democratically control the organization, right? One member, one vote type of thinking. And it speaks to the fact that members who buy the goods or use the services of the co-op make decisions. Again, in our traditional corporate structure, we have corporations, right? Like a Walmart or whatever the case is. It's owned by a family, right? They're over there. It's operated by a different group of workers, and then its customers are a different group of people. So these three stakeholders that are essential to this, right? The owners, the operators, and the customers, they're all distinct, they're all separate, and they don't interact, and they keep trying to shortchange each other, right? And so, how do we reduce that spacing and bring these stakeholders closer together so they can have a shared, more harmonious future, right? And not put the people who use the services on the out, right? Bring them in. So that's what cops are really good at as well. The third principle that is really important for membership is member economic participation, right? Members benefit in a co-op differently than they benefit in a traditional corporate structure. In a traditional corporation, in this country, we'll see the more you invest, right, the more capital you provide, the more shares you own, and the more decision making you have. So the more money I have, the more coercive control I have over the enterprise, right? I invest more money, I get more votes. In a co-op, it's kind of flipped. Instead of just how much money you put in, which maybe you have a member loan with the co-op outside of your initial member buy-in, we're not going to dilute your voting power, right? Because it's one member, one vote, and you can economically benefit in proportion to how much you patronize the business. The more I use it, right? If I have a consumer co-op, a grocery store, for example, the more I shop there, we might be internally tracking that. And the more I shop there, the more I'm able to get a return if we produce a surplus at the end, right? And we might have a point system looking at how well you're using it. Maybe you're in a worker co-op. The more hours I put in, if that's what we're looking at, the more I may be entitled to a portion of the surplus at the end of the year, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at how do we participate and use the co-op more so than how much money we've invested, right? And that is what gives us control, using the institution, the enterprise, as opposed to investing money and allowing money to be the final say. So these are key principles. And again, there are other principles, there are other systems of understanding the world, like Inguza Saba and others from indigenous communities, that we can use to, better approximate the things that are really important to us. But these are the top three member-centric principles articulated by the ICN, International Cooperative Alliance. The next concept is entrepreneurship, right? It's a French word, entry, prendre, take. And so it's about taking entry, taking initiative. An entrepreneur is someone who takes that initiative to solve a group of problem for a group of people and creates value for it, right? They get paid for it. So you take that initiative, you solve that problem, you're a problem solver, and you are able to recoup some value. That's what the entrepreneur is. After you become a member of a co-op, you're part of the whole community, but now you have to start thinking like an entrepreneur, especially if you're in a worker cooperative, right? How do we create value for our customers, right? That target market, that group of people with the problem we're trying to solve. In some cases, it could be us, right? We could be, like if we're in a community-owned grocery store or a consumer co-op, food co-op, We will be the target market as well as our broader community, as well as the entrepreneurs, right? Not everyone, but that's how we have to think of things, right? We are now in a business where we're trying to create value for other people. So we may be included in that, what's valuable for us, right? We might want certain foods, we're a target market, but maybe there's a broader community that we have to think about as well. What problems do they have, and how do we solve them? And that value proposition, right? That proposed value, the benefits that that target market, the group of people with a problem can expect from your service or product, right? What benefits are we proposing to offer to our target market? So membership, entrepreneurship, being a part of the community, and then taking that initiative to serve that community. And then ownership, right? Now we're thinking about how do we track the flows in this business, primarily the financial flows. A lot of us may come into the co-op movement as organizers, as stewards of our community, and less so as entrepreneurs, business-minded people, people thinking about money. But it's an important part of the equation because cooperatives are businesses, especially in our American context. And so you can have social cooperatives, but they still are going to be processing money. And it might seem like a foreign language. That's why I have it up here in Spanish. Maybe all of you can speak Spanish, but some of us can't. And that doesn't make us dumb, right? It just means we don't speak that language. So we have to learn the language of financial statements so we can speak to each other about how money is moving through the company, right? We have to learn financial intelligence so we can make decisions that are around the financial aspects of the business. And we have to find ways to communicate that to other people who don't speak the language of money, right? How do we visualize what's happening to the money so we can count the money together and maintain that trust and have a profitable enterprise that can deliver a surplus to our members, right? So again, it's a language. We have to learn it so we can speak to each other around these issues, as opposed to something only for the money guys, the accountants, the bookkeepers. If you want to truly own your business, you need to know what's going on with the money, right? You need to be a member of it. You need to be able to create value for whoever you're trying to create value for, and you need to be able to count what's going on. You be able to account for what's going on in the business financially and otherwise. So these are the three key ships that take you on this journey. I'll stop here for a second. Any questions on any of that kind of, co-op overview, membership, entrepreneurship, ownership? Excellent. So now we can start to think about our own co-op, right? We have a sense of all of the ways co-ops can be and the bigger picture of how co-ops fit into solidarity economy or alternative economy. And we know these three ships: membership, entrepreneurship, ownership. Now I want to invite you to consider your own journeys, right? If we are trying to get to a place where we're cooperatively ever after, right? We create a co-op and things are moving in a pace that everyone can follow along, and we get to an end result that is harmonious, that achieves our goal, that is cooperative, right? So initially, you may start as a pioneer, that entrepreneur who sees an opportunity, that visionary, and you set off to explore it. You're a founder, you might be alone, you might be thinking, I really want to do this thing, but you don't yet have that community, right? A community committee. And maybe you found your first follower, right? Various talented people start to tag in, and you guys have to figure it out, but it's a bit of a circus. Everyone's a bit wild. And now you start to professionalize, right? You take off the red nose and you put on a tie. You start to think, okay, how do we represent this thing in the community, right? There's a lot of pressure to professionalize. And now we have project teams, someone's doing communication and marketing, someone's doing membership. We start to develop this professionalized system, right? And then we start to standardize. Well, all the different teams are emailing differently and describing the co-op differently. What's going on? Let's standardize, right? But now we're all trying to think the same. How do we think outside of the box, right? Rather than get hierarchical and impose a standard while we're standardizing that we can all live up to. And then beyond that, These are likely to be the stages you experience. You don't need to, but they're pretty typical. How do we now rehumanize, right? We've created these organizational standards. We've kind of recognized how do we separate tasks and delegate and account. Now we have to rehumanize, right? We have to bring the human back into business. It's something a lot of us are tasked with and charged with in this co-op movement and whatever other enterprise we're part of, right? So how do we bring power back to the people after we've created a set of standards that we've empowered for us to all align with? And then finally, that autonomy, that self-law. How do we do what we want, right? How do we take that power to create change in our lives and our communities? So, whether this is the flow that you have in mind or not, I want to invite you to consider that. Consider the end, right? Consider when you're an ancestor of this co-op that you've tried to create, right? You're at not necessarily the end of the road, but you're someone who helped birth this, and there's descendants, there's a new generation coming in, right? What will this co-op look like and feel like? I want to invite you to think of your own timeline, maybe create an artifact, something that helps you imagine how your co-op looks and feels, right? A story. What stories do you have around how your project gets to a cooperatively ever after? So get a piece of pen, paper out. Let me give you 1 minute to think through what that story might be for you. What is cooperatively after for you? Maybe you can draw an artifact, maybe you can do the timeline. Reflect on the story. Take 1 minute. There's another 30 seconds. All right. Feel free to come off mute or drop in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing anything that came up for you. What was an artifact? What was a story? What was a timeline that made sense for you as you pursue your cooperative ever after? Anyone have anything that came up for them?
For me, I was really just thinking about like, well, the early days, like where I'm at now, and then where I could be in like where this thing could be in like 20 years. And right now, I'm still at that kind of early pioneer area where I'm, conceptualizing the vision. I have a few people who, are on board and want to be a part. And we still have to kind of like align and, cast out our specific first steps in the vision. Um, But yeah, starting with the end in mind, like I think the goal is to eventually be fully integrated and, have um, a network that is in kind of key communities. Uh, and to say about a little bit about what we are a freelancer cooperative for creative and technology workers, aimed at allowing those workers to engage in community-centered work. So providing uh, opportunities that are both well paid, but also aligned with our values, which is typically hard to find. But we aim to be like a center for that, driving value for both the workers as well as the community-based organizations. So in 20 years, what we'd hope to have is, you know, a very solid presence in some of the key areas in, geographics that we aim to be a part of. So of course, I'm based in Brooklyn right now. So Brooklyn being a starting place, LA, which is where I'm originally from. So starting to expand to different areas, but having those deep community partnerships with both the institutions and organizations that we're working with, as well as bringing up like the newer generation that can be a part of our network of creative and technology workers through something like a school or learning program that directly allows those people to engage directly.
So, yeah, getting value for the freelancers and the clients,
Mm.
was to me. All right, thanks, Akil. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think about, I don't have a cooperative set up, and I'm here to try to figure out how to get in my mind, out of my mind, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot about circular economics, and one of the ways we miss so many things when we think individualistically or exploitatively with money. So anywho, my idea has been wrapped around, and I'm trying to get it launched with small makers working together to, share things initially. But the idea is that there's a lot of problems, especially around the area where I'm living right now. But I also think it's much greater in different parts of the country where local townships, cities are losing money because big businesses are coming in and taking and extracting that money and pulling it out. But there's so many different studies that have been performed about if you can keep the money local and have it just circulate around, it builds wealth on a much different scale, right? So I think we all know that. That's why we're here. But I think about everything being somewhat open source. So there are a lot of friends that I've made that have like corporate jobs, but then they make something on the side. They all want to leave corporate America, but they can't because it's like they're too scared to like, what if they fail? But what if there was something where these groups could be working together? So what I think about long vision is if you start one of these things an open source idea and you're creating it. So let's just call the first one a small maker of foods, right? Whether that be chips or drinks or chocolates or whatever that is. But I see that as like somewhat of a snowball effect. So as soon as you can build that out, maybe it's a public-private where the university is working with the local city to help provide space for entrepreneurs that need to come in. I don't want to say incubator, but something similar in that mind frame. But then it would help be a jumping off point for that cooperative of small makers. But all the while keeping these things very visible in terms of being open source, so people can understand like what are the forms that they need to fill out, the what it looks like for co-ops to be, how do they come together, what are the rules of engagement, how do you go out and find other people? And so I think about this as long term, being there's multiple different cooperatives within a given region, and the idea isn't to grow astronomically large, but you think of what Mondragon is doing in Spain, huge. But then that also just spreads, I think, things a bit thin. So yes, you have community, but maybe that's too spread out. I'm not sure. I almost feel like if you keep cooperatives small, but maybe have multiple different ones. And so this first one I'm seeing is more of an idea that I can hopefully help grow with small makers and then moving into other parts. And I'm thinking, 50 years out, I'll be dead before this probably comes to complete fruition. I'm very well aware, but I don't know. I'm ready. Yeah.
Excellent. I love it. So you're thinking of the ecosystem and how do we facilitate a local economy where we see how to engage in this work, we know how to engage in this work, and we have community spaces and institutions that are in support of that.
Totally. And the only other thing that I forgot to mention that I wanted to is that when I have two children in elementary school, and they've come home at different times in their education life, basically talking to me about money and how you earn money and how you make money. And they want to do a lemonade stand, but they don't want to do it with their brother because their brother will then have to take share in the profits as well. Right. And then I start thinking about all the different ways that our children are not learning about different types of money systems or different ways of working together, whether it be solidarity, whether it be, like everything's mine, nothing's yours. Like, what are the different roles? And I've realized there's no information for children in at least in the public education system that I've seen so far, where they're learning anything about a different way of producing wealth or generating community wealth, which in turn generates a different type of being. So hopefully in that process, along those however many decades, we can actually start getting this type of information instilled in our community schools.
Well, that's kind of something to a keel, get into that learning community. Katiana, anyone else want to invite you if you would like share some of the dreams you're having? Free in the room, substance free.
I don't know that I'm ready to share exactly. I think
No
I'm
problem.
still like working on embracing what this looks like and just kind of experience some of the pushback because it's just so foreign now in the capitalistic world that we live in. So that's part why like I've signed up to get more knowledge and more resources and trying to kind of plant the seed.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good first step. Learning. Okay. All right, excellent. So,
Hey, Brother Johan.
hey, Free.
This is my second time joining your workshops, and they're always good. This has really helped me. In the beginning, I was dealing with being confident to move forward without feeling like I was stepping on toes, making sure everyone was giving full consent for me to lead. So I'm at that point, got through that. And this timeline really has me more focused and honed in. We have a community meeting coming up in May, and this is really just reaffirming that it's time. But my dream is to have it open, and we have about 10 local urban farms. I would love to, just seeing it open and operating organically, being what we all say we want, the money recycling 7 times in a community before it leaves, and that would be just a small part of and how to do it. So that's one of my big dreams or goals or whatever you want to call it. So Ashe, thank you.
Taking those steps, moving beyond where we've been, loving that, having that community buy-in. So we have this big dream. Where do we begin? This is where a tool like the co-op design canvas can come in and support you on your journey. Whether you're a lone founder or you've got your first follower, a small community, community committee. The first step that I always encourage people to do or to take is to define the problem. A lot of the time we have a big dream and we have the solution, but we do not have a community who shares in that dream yet. And so now we think our job is to convince them of the solution. But we actually need to take a step back and really uncover what is the shared problem amongst us, because there may be several unmet needs and desires in our community, right? Let's say we want to do a worker co-op. Some people might need income, right? I just need to, make some money. Some people might need security, right? I might need to feel more secure in this community, have stable access to the jobs, right? Or I might need access. I might need access to something that is particular, right? That might be something a food co-op might be trying to respond to: access to culturally relevant foods, healthy foods, affordable housing, right? Secure housing, or housing I can afford. So there's different problems people are experiencing. The people who you have in mind to join your co-op may have one of these problems be more painful than the other ones. And for you, you're thinking, if we can create wealth in our community, get some income, that'd be great. Someone else is thinking, if I can have stable income, that'd be great. Someone else is thinking, if I could just have access. So what is that problem? And so an activity I would advise you to do with your small group or someone who might be interested is to list the problems, and rank which is most painful, right? List the problems in your community around this issue, around this dream you have everyone do it. And then you compare, where do we agree that this problem is the most painful, or which problem do we all share? And that is where you can start, right? The next step is the cooperative solution. So now that we have a shared problem, how do we envision solving it together, right? Are we going to sell stuff together, right? That's what a lot of producer co-ops do, right? We're going to sell our grapes. We're 5 farms, urban farms. We have these different vegetables. Maybe we could sell them in bulk so we can get into certain grocery stores. Or we're going to buy together, right? It's cheaper to buy in wholesale. And so we can add a lot of value by saving money to some of our community residents if 10, 15, 100, 1,000 of us decide to buy together, right? Was our problem access? Okay, now we can use economies of scale to buy it together. Or is it to make together, right? Are we going to make something together because it makes more sense that way, right? We start marketing our goods and services. We buy a mill together so we can process all our wheat or whatever the case is. Are we going to share an asset, right? There's a few of us. We want to we're all, makers. And so we decide we're going to create a co-op to access real estate, and we're going to share space, right? We're going to split this rent, and we're just going to each have shelf space in a shared real estate environment, right? So what can you easily do together that you cannot do alone? I cannot afford to rent in this place alone. Now I've got 3 other businesses to do it for me. I cannot make this wine or this wheat or whatever the case is alone, right? I need to get this machinery. Maybe all of us can do it. I only need it 1 or 2 days a week, right? Buying and selling similarly. So we know our problem. We can see a solution, something that we cannot do easily alone. What's going to be different if we succeed? In other words, what does success look like? This is a very important step because we may have different visions around how our solution moves us forward, right? If my vision in the world is that we have more time with our families in our worker co-op, I'm not going to be pursuing bigger and bigger and bigger jobs. And, Tom might look at me like, hey, we got to make more money. But I'm thinking, no, we want secure careers, right? And so what's going to be different in the world is that we have more time with our families. We feel secure in this world. And so that is a different orientation. So we all need that shared vision. We need to understand the problem. We need to understand what the solution is. And we need to have a shared vision. So we're not all moving in different directions, even if we think we're doing the same thing. which is showing up to work every day, right? How does it take us to that cooperatively ever after, right? Knowing the impact you're trying to make in the world. So these are essential. You know your problem, you have your solution, you have your vision. Now you can think about members. Who are the ones who will organize together to make this need? Is it people who are individual businesses or who are farmers or creators? Is it consumers, people who need to access and consume the credit, the services, right? Whether it's childcare or food or something else, or housing? Or is it, are we going to work together and pool our labor? Is that how we're going to meet this need, right? And then how will decisions be made? Will we make decisions through consulting with each other? Susie, you're really good at marketing. Why don't you tell us what we think we should do with our marketing? And you consult with us and then we kind of all agree on that. Or is it consensus? We want to generally be aligned with what the decision is going to be, right? Or is it consent, right? We don't want to have anyone object. We keep the bar at a consent level. So people have to consent to the decision rather than all agree, right? No objections versus we're all excited. Is it a majority, right? 51% of our members need to agree on this, right? The classic Democratic majority. Or is it a super majority, right? Up to 75%. Maybe we have majority for some issues, super majority for other issues. Or is it unanimous, right? We all have to absolutely agree to move things forward. So how do we make decisions and what area of our businesses need certain types of decision? And then participation, right? What will each member be asked to contribute, right? Are we going to ask members to contribute money to provide capital for the business, startup capital, or to buy something that it needs, to have a buy-in to become a member at all? Is it labor, right? We're going to be asking members to put in work, maybe not work that provides our income, right? If we're a coffee shop, not necessarily working in the coffee shop, but maybe hosting a little party on the weekend for us to get together and think about our new logo or something else, right? Decorating the outside of the store, right? And that's more of a, non-profit inducing task, but it's something that still needs to be done. Or is it ideas, right? We need input, feedback, survey, new ideas that you don't know and we all will benefit from. Is that what we need you to contribute, right? So what will each member be asked to contribute? And what will each member be entitled to, right? We're giving and we're taking, right? So will each member of the cooperative be entitled to money? When will we distribute money, right? How will we set up our patronage distribution or dividend system, right? Is it information? Do we know do all of us get access to the financial information, to each other's pay information, for example, or other types of information? How about decisions? Are we all entitled to make all decisions or some, right? Are members to making some, management making some, governance making some? What type of decisions are members entitled to and what roles, right? Do we all get to take on any roles because we want to, or is there a process? And finally, up here, how will we resolve conflict? Conflict is inevitable. It's part of growth. It's part of finding the truth about things. How do we engage in conflict and how do we resolve it? If we have an issue we can't come to terms with, do we go outside for facilitator? Do we have a process where one of us is assigned as a mediator? How do we resolve conflict? So these are key areas that if you have some forethought, you can really smooth your journey. The last two pieces include who's outside of the cooperative that is needed for success, right? Do we need service providers, strategic partners, advisors, folks who are part of our stakeholder community that we want to hear their voices, right? We're a worker-owned co-op and we sell coffee. We love these people we sell coffee to, but they aren't members. They aren't on our board if we have one. Do we need to find a way to elevate their voices so we can see and honor what they have to say? And finally, what equipment and assets will the cooperative need to succeed? So these are questions that can be very helpful to you on your journey. And we've created this co-op design canvas to help you explore it. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat right now. When you click on the link, it will prompt you to make a copy of this document that you can edit yourself. So since there's only a few of us, I was going to initially do some breakout groups, but I'm actually just going to give you time to work on yours. And then if you have any questions after about 10 minutes, we can kind of explore it together. So let's drop that in the chat. You guys can open it. Pretty sure this is it. Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any trouble accessing this link? Everyone's got it? Give me a thumbs up once you've got it. Make your copy. Excellent. Keel, Kara, Free, Tatiana. Wow, it was an explosion. All right. So take about 10 minutes and work on your co-op and your dream for your co-op. And then when we come back, we'll talk about what was difficult for you in doing so and see what type of resources might be helpful to you to get past what's the most difficult step in that process. So some of you are not quite there yet, but just take the time to explore, and I'll be here. Yeah. Let's give them some tunes.
Just one more time. The light has changed, but you're still mine. I know just what I wanna do. Tell me if you want it to. As we go to and fro, the light has changed, but you're still mine. I know just what I wanna do to you. Tell me if you want it to. Just call my name. Just call my name. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, call my name. Da, da, da. Call my name. Call my name. Da, da, da. As we go to and fro, tell me if you want it to. As we go to and fro, tell me if you want it to. As we go to and fro, tell me if you want it to.
All right. So, how was that for folks? Well, to just hear a little bit about what was most difficult for you to conceive of and design for, and maybe we could talk about that a little bit, or what felt really good, what really helped you see what's possible as you approach the design of your own co-op.
I could go, Johan. Kudos to me because the first time I seen this, I was really like, "What in the world?" And because we were really stuck on what's the problem? Focusing on a problem but having a difficult time moving beyond the problem because there's so many other things feeding into the problem when you're in the community like I'm in. Um, I think, and I'm excited. We're going to start May 1st at our meeting with B. I feel really good about that. What can we do together that we can't do alone? Because we have so many entrepreneurs and um, makers, and we have Ujima Collective, as Sister Lakeisha does. So we are, naturally will partner with Ujima to have a small boutique area. So there's some things that are tangible. I think what I'm trying to get at would be that uplifts after what the problem is, because we know what the problem is, right? Food sovereignty, not having access to organic food. We have corner stores every 3 blocks, but it's all toxic food and tobacco products, right? Um, and we could talk about that for hours. And the biggest thing is autonomy, having and releasing the fear that someone's going to come and take it from us. Yes, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of times we can get stuck on the problem because there's so many problems in the community. But when we think about it in the context of what problem can we solve together, right? First, we need to all have that problem, and then we have to realize, oh, I can't one man band this or one woman show this. I have to work with other people. So it's a great way to move past that overwhelm and that broadness. Anyone else? What was difficult? What felt like it helped you progress?
I think in general, it's just it feels good to be able to actually dig into the pieces of this to help you affirm what you're wanting to do, but also get yourself into alignment with where long-term vision sits at. Problem is definitely the hardest for sure, but even in these 10 minutes, like it's been great to be able to sort of jot down all the different problems that could exist. And I think oftentimes, I mean, as humans, we see all the things that just comes in, and it's very hard to decide, okay, what's the more important thing, because you almost always feel like you're leaving something out. But being able to realize that, it's one step forward, it's all you can do. But yeah, this is great. Thank you.
So, yeah, it's true. This is a great tool for alignment. Again, we all have different senses of the problem. You're looking at a different part of the elephant and thinking snake, tree, this and that. And to have alignment is extremely important when you're trying to align a community to create an enterprise that we're all going to have a role in that is responsible for an output. So, yeah, that alignment is key. And knowing that we can't solve every problem at once, but we can take it one step at a time is very helpful. Okay. Go ahead, yeah.
So I guess for me, I think there's a multitude of what the problems are. I guess I had to kind of think, well, like, what's the biggest one here? And it's access, I would say, and then it kind of trickles down into some of the others that were mentioned there and probably more. But that access, I think, is something that is the number one problem I'm hoping to try to resolve. And then just kind of hearing what Free was saying, like full of entrepreneurs. Like I'm thinking of doing something that centers BIPOC creatives. I've been doing it. I'm trying to do it. But it's just not it's not translating well enough because there's a lot of individualism that exists too. And what I'm trying to do is hopefully get like people to understand that collectively we can do something, not just one single person having to do it, because we're talking about shifting structure or building our own structure around what we actually need. So there's that.
Yeah, completely with you on that. I think, we have to strike this weird balance again, finding the right problem, that is almost more important than solution finding, making sure we're aligned on the problem we're trying to solve because there's so many problems, right? And sometimes we think, okay, we need to get resources to this community, right? So we put out a flyer and then we realize, oh, the community can't read, right? Now we got to deal with a different problem. So, or at least English or whatever the case is. So we also have to find the right problem and start at that point. And we also have to have a dream big enough to include everyone, right? Otherwise, people might, because of the conditioning in this system, go out and try to do it themselves, right? So how do you have a dream that lets people know they're needed, right? Something we can't easily do alone. They can see themselves in it, and it's the right problem. So it's not easy. And that's why I advised have everyone write down their problem and rank them. And once we see where everyone's problem is on a whiteboard or on this same document and how they rank it, now we know this is the actual problem we have to start with. Doesn't mean we can't get to the other ones, right? We let things unfold. We have a dream big enough at the end of this thing that contains all of these solutions, but we have to start right here. And all of us are needed right here for this problem. So it is a big issue. Excellent. So I want to encourage you guys to finish this, right? That'll be your homework assignment and send it over if you want feedback. You can do it over email. We can schedule something, or you can just pop up in our office hours with it, right? Next Wednesday will be the first one at noon. So this will be the first assignment. So we're going to move forward, right? Once you start thinking of these steps, in a perfect world, this is how it might look, right? We have a shared problem. It's clear. We've listed them all. Everyone in the group has listed them and ranked them. And we're saying, okay, that's number 2 for you, number 3 for me, number 1. That's the one that we're going to work on. Now we're going to organize a community around that problem, right? So we're going to create a little steering committee and any project teams. And we're going to say, we're just going to explore this problem to see if we can solve it. And if we think we can solve it, we're going to create a co-op. If we don't, we'll try something else. So now we're learning, we're doing community learning. We're exploring the co-op model, right? The business aspect of it, which is the economic engine. How do we deal with business feasibility, making sure this thing can solve a problem for an intended audience? And then how do we deal with the community building as well? Making sure that we have a community that is sustainable generation to generation, right? So there's a process for becoming a member, for staying in the cooperative and growing in the cooperative and leaving the cooperative, right? If you can't leave, it's a cult. So you need to think about how do you get in and get out and design that process, right? The community piece, right? And then we've got the business end, right? So customer discovery, really looking into who is the growing group of people that we want to serve, right? Customer discovery, market research, maybe even prototyping some of our ideas with pop-ups or online flyers or things like that, that test interest. Now we might get into the incorporation, which is where most people focus their efforts when they're thinking about starting a co-op. But it's really the most straightforward part, right? You look at your Department of State, file the articles of incorporations. You might create bylaws, which is like your membership manual for the organization, but it's in legalese. So you might create a membership handbook to keep it simple. And you create a business plan, right? What are we making? How do we make it? How do we sell it? And how are we tracking it? And then finally, once we know we have this business plan, we have this membership plan, now we can start raising money to execute our business ideas from our members. So maybe they do member loans, contributions, pre-sales. Maybe we start looking for grants. Maybe we start looking for loans, crowdfunding opportunities outside of us, and we build it out and hire. So this is perfect world thinking, right? In reality, we do have to deal with the membership first, and then we get to the marketplace, and they're really 2 wings of a bird, right? They're the economic engine and the governance engine, right? The 2 engines that make a co-op work. But this is really what happens, right? This squiggly path going back and forth We start organizing, we start thinking of the business, then we come into learning more about business, and then we go thinking about pop-ups, and then we think, okay, if we're gonna do pop-ups, we need people to be able to join this co-op, let's create some type of membership application, and then we're thinking, okay, maybe we can get a grant for it. So it's all over the place in reality, right? We would love it to be a sequence step, but this is often what we encounter, right? A road that winds and turns into itself and unfolds. So we have to be prepared for that. We know what the steps generally are, but it's not always so neat. So we kind of heard from you in the last sharing around, where you are, what's your next step. But what is your next step, right? Find yourself in this journey. Orient yourself. Where are you? And think, what is your next step? For some of you, you've considered a problem and you've gathered a group, but it's hard to get that group to align, So now we're dealing with community organizing, maybe even community learning. We have to learn about co-ops together. So I'm not the expert poorly explaining to everyone what this is about, right? Let's actually create a study group and read a book, right? We study Collective Courage by Dr. Laura Nemhart. We study Marcus Garvey, W.B. Du Bois. We study other models in South America, in Africa, and in Europe, right? We study different models and we learn together what this thing is, what we want to be when we grow up, what our shared dream is. So what is your next step, right? And should you start a co-op? That might be the question you ask if you're at the beginning of that journey. Well, is there a self-defined problem, a painful, personal, unmet need, something that you can relate to? Sometimes we think of problems in our community and we can't quite, say, oh, we're dealing with homelessness, but I need to solve homelessness. That might be something you need to think of, right? Are the people who are experiencing this problem involved? Even if you're on the edge of that and you're trying to create a space to deal with this problem, how do you relate to that problem? And more importantly, is this problem experienced by a community of people who are willing to work on it, right? At least 3 members is probably a good space to be in if you want to actually incorporate. But if you've got 2, you've got a party, you've got someone who's with you going the distance, even if the distance is, should we do this or not? And then finally, are you willing to share in the responsibility and rewards, right? We don't have anyone who wants full control all the time, not willing to share control, or someone who's exclusively profit driven, trying to get a higher return, right? Because that's antithetical to the co-op model, even though profits are a part of the co-op model because they're businesses. So is there a self-defined problem experienced by a community of people willing to share responsibility and rewards? If that's yes, get started, right? You guys like each other, you have the same problem, and you're willing to share in the outcome. That's a good place to get started. So to close out, I want to encourage you to envision a shared future with the community of people who will be using the services of the co-op or will be sharing their labor to create the services of the co-op. To organize your community, it's difficult to shift from a community to an organization. In a community, everyone's welcome. Everyone has a place. We're just being together and being connected. But in the organization, we have roles, responsibilities, and accountability. So it's hard to transition. How do you start organizing your community with the sense that we're going to take on roles and be accountable to certain shared goals? And then how do you grow your people for power? There are going to be countless tasks along the way that you don't know how to do yet. How do we create space for learning and education in the co-op so that we can grow up to be the people who can solve the problems in our community? Or even if we seek outside help, how do we learn from those experiences? Because when we delegate or hire consultants and all those are helpful and they can fill in necessary gaps, but it can also decrease your own capacity to do those tasks. So how do you build up power within, even as you borrow power from without? So these are some simple tips for getting started. We also have some resources on our website, coopfund.coop. If you go there and click learn, you'll see a variety of resources around creating co-ops and growing co-ops. We have a playlist around many topics that we've covered in our workshops or otherwise. And we've got a monthly newsletter you can sign up for. It always has resources to help you learn, whether it's a workshop or a conference. It has community resources that we put out there and capital related resources, funding opportunities. So check that out, subscribe if you haven't done so. We've got the tool that we use today, the Co-op Design Canvas, and several other tools we'll be covering in other sessions throughout this course, this mini course. So you can tune into those. And you can always attend an office hour every Wednesday, 12 to 1, or schedule a coaching call. And coaching call, come on. So questions, reach out to us as well. Johan, Carla, Carolyn, I think we're all in this call. 3 of us interact with folks to provide co-op coaching at different levels and different topics. So I will end the session at that. Next time, we're going to meet May 20th, 12 to 1:30, and we're going to be talking about management approaches such as open book management, other tools that you can use to support your co-op to share in that management process. Co-op curious office hours dropped in the chat. Thank you, Carolyn. I'm gonna stop sharing, or at least, stop talking and invite any closing questions if we have any. Any unanswered questions or just curiosities that folks might have before we close out to this session?
I'll also just say if anybody did not register for this and wants to be registered for the rest of the series and get the recording, just drop your email in the chat or DM me. I think y'all signed up, but just in case.